Hi, all. We're going to take a look at Chapter 6 this week, Design and Analysis and Creation when Using Technology. So we've got digital writing and digital publishing. And when we use word processing, we're able to control the form and appearance of content, but moving graphics around on a Word document can be really difficult versus desktop publishing. And this is designed to create documents, have separate pages, linked as a whole product. And this one's a little bit easier to move things around on. But then, how do you integrate the idea of using these publishing softwares in your classroom? Well, you are already doing this as a teacher. When you create items digitally, it saves time because you can go back and modify and make changes without having to redo the entire work that you've done. It also enhances the way things look. It makes it look neat and it makes it look professional. It's easier to share documents when they've been done digitally. You can email them to individuals or flash drives. And then it also allows you to collaborate with others. You can be working on the same document at the same time. Now, when you're working with your students, though, we want them to use writing and publishing as a way to talk about and represent the knowledge that they've been learning. And utilizing these strategies really supports the writing process, and it allows students to collaborate with writing and use language with meaning. And when you're utilizing technology, it encourages writing, whether it's in math or science or social studies or language arts, and allows students in those other subjects to report what they're finding in their research. And it allows students to have a creative outlet. Now, when students are using digital writing and publishing, the quality of the work is better. And students tend to write more because the physical act of writing is very tiring for some students. When it's done digitally, you'll see that there's fewer mechanical errors, and sometimes that's simply because there's programs within word processing or word programs to find spelling and grammatical errors. Students are more willing to make revisions when all that is needed to make a change is a click of a keyboard rather than rewriting an entire work. Students want to publish their work then because they're proud of what they've done. And that also contributes then to better attitudes when it comes to the idea of writing. But there are some challenges. The first off is, when do you introduce students to word processing programs? Some start as young as 4 or 5 years old, but then it's also, you're going to have to teach them keyboarding skills. Do you start those at those times? And some studies are showing that when you're introducing word processing alongside the handwriting is going to suffer, and students' handwriting is struggling because of that. Then you also have, when you're asking students to work collaboratively or to peer edit, you need to scaffold and model how to give that substantial feedback. It doesn't just naturally happen. So you have to teach them how to give that feedback when they're writing. And then, how about when you're asking students to create multimodal representations of what they've learned? Well, here they can use imaging editing or infographic concept mapping, presentation software, or create a web page similar to what you all are doing in this class. Now, when we're integrating this, we do this when we're showing students pictures because it enhances spoken information. We're integrating videos and other items, multimedia, into our content. And when we're inserting those things in, again, like when we're doing publishing, it makes our content look more professional and polished. And it helps students organize and think about topics. And this can serve as learning artifacts. So when we want to show what we've been able to accomplish as a teacher, we can pull these things out. Now, when it comes, again, for teachers, we've got to demonstrate these concepts. What does it look? Our thinking process, how are we operating? And we've got to illustrate how we're seeing problems and solution, and then presenting summaries. And then when we're utilizing these representations, sometimes it's to assess where students are. Sometimes it's to practice or to or tutor students in an area. Sometimes it's just for a review. But as teachers, when we're asking students to do these things, one of the large elements we need to do is make sure that we're having them focus on the content and not just the design. As soon as you tell students that they're going to create something like this, they get very into the pictures and the background information and the colors and the font. But the focus needs to be on the content, and that's what you need to do as a teacher. And students, when you're asking them to collaborate for representations, utilizing these multimedia, multimodal strategies is fabulous. So think about things like book reports or interactive storybooks or representations of what they've learned in class, their research. Now, students do need to be trained on what to put in these representations and how they should look. And one of the biggest issues students have is font. They don't understand that they need approximately a 32-point font to be able to see if this is a projected representation, and colors that are contrasting between the text and the background so it stands out. Students also like to write just paragraphs upon paragraphs on their PowerPoints, and teaching them to minimize the amount of text they have there and keeping those representation simple. They love the fonts. The fancier the better, but we got to teach them to avoid those. We want stuff that's clear. And then they insert pictures and photos everywhere. Oftentimes it has nothing to do with what the representation is about in the writing. And so teaching them to connect those two ideas and inserting the graphics in. Some students have the opposite problem where they've written so many paragraphs they don't have room for the graphics, and getting that balance. And so getting the students to do that. One of the big issues when it comes to presenting, though, is students will directly read the information on their PowerPoint screens. I've seen students turn around to read the screen rather than using it as a prompt and a cue for discussing and explaining what it is that they have learned. So there are great benefits of using digital representation. First, it effectively allows students to share content information. Students are engaged when they do this, and it allows you as a teacher, as they're working, to see their progress as they're going along and help them make adjustments to what they're doing. You can adjust your instruction if you realized, oh, I need to go back and teach this. And it supports communication among younger children and content-rich understandings. So there is problems and challenges. We've talked about the lack of focus on the message content, and the other issue tends to be with lack of coherent visual design. But then let's move on to using data and analysis and assessment. Now, these are things like spreadsheets and charts and graphs and databases and digital portfolios, which we'll get into a lot more when you have curriculum and assessment. So teachers, we collect data all the time, and we do analyze data. We're doing this when we're preparing classroom materials and organizing and calculating grades. And we also use data. We're polling students, asking questions, organizing information, examining student achievement data, and building graphs on how students are accomplishing goals. But students need to understand they do these things as well. Students, if you're asking them to collect or analyze data, switch to use computer programs. Develop personalized learning plans with your students. It supports visualization of ideas when you have a graph associated with those numbers. And because students are actively engaged, it increases motivation as well to learn this. And the cool thing is there's real world data right at their fingertips. Student can also lead data collection and amongst their peers, and they can develop analysis skills by evaluating these different visualization and charts and graphs and interpreting what they actually mean. This also is going to help students establish data organization techniques. How are you organizing the data after you have collected it? Additionally, it helps learners visualize numeric and scientific concepts when they can create the charts and the graphs and the models from them. And it helps teachers and students develop those data literacy skills. Now, the big challenge here is limited teacher confidence and proficiency. Oftentimes, teachers are afraid of technology that's dealing in this area, but don't be. It's okay to try something new and learn something new. That's what we're asking our students to do all the the time, and making sure that when you're assigning projects in this area that you're establishing optimal learning conditions, that it's a project that's actually going to lend itself to data collection and analysis. And then misconceptions that students are already technologically or data knowledgeable. They're not. Students need to be taught these pieces.